it's a new season, right? Preseason's over, non-conference pretty much over. It's go time for us now. Our guys are excited. Everyone got to go home for Christmas for a couple of days, refresh our brains, refresh our bodies. We had a couple workouts coming back in a couple different groups just as we tested for a couple of days, make sure everyone was negative before getting together. And today was our second contact practice since we've been back, and excited to compete on Saturday and hoping it happens.
All right, we'll open it up to anyone that has a question. Just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Coach, just from what you know about Northern Colorado, what's your sort of assessment of them? Do you have like kind of a scouting report in mind of the team?
Well, very similar to what they've been the past 4 or 5 years. A team that wants to shoot threes and then defend the three, right? And they're trying to outscore you that way. They'll trade threes for twos for the most part. Good defensive team. I think the thing that's kind of separated them from a lot of the teams in our conference is they know who they are. Their players know who they are. Their roles are very definitive, and they excel in those roles. And I think that they're that same team right now. Obviously, some guys in some new roles, and who probably haven't played enough games to really have a good feel for how good everyone is in those roles. But as usual, they're going to have some guys that shoot that ball very well, and we've got to minimize those opportunities.
Do they look any different with a new coach, or is it there? I know he was obviously there, so they running similar stuff.
Same offensive packages, same style of play on both sides. Maybe tweak a couple things here and there. Every coach is going to have his own tendencies in terms of how he handles adjustments and things that he goes to in meaningful moments. But pretty much the same program.
Travis, you guys have already had, one of these, weekend games where you play off day, play again. What are some things that, you guys took from the Southern Utah game at the beginning of the season that, you're going to adjust to this time around?
Well, this time around, you got a little more time going in. We had played at USC, and it was a fairly quick turnaround for us. But, I think the biggest thing is just, obviously you want to try to win the first game, and depending on how the game is played, will determine how many adjustments that you've got to make that day in between. And I thought we made a couple of adjustments that led to a better performance out of us the second time around. So we'll try to do the same thing. I just think for us, it's more attention to detail that cost us that game than it was the time in between.
Go ahead, Jack.
Okay. Coach, just how hungry are your guys just get their first conference win? Because obviously, Southern Utah you couldn't get a win there. And just how hungry are they to get back on top of the conference and start winning conference games?
That's to be determined. We'll know that when the ball goes in the air. I think for us, we're one game out of a time program, so we don't really pay too close attention to the standings. And because what happens is you can create a level of desperation when you still have 18 games to play. And so for us, the most important thing is to improve every time out. We need to be a better basketball team than we were when we played last week. And so, our main focus right now is just Northern Colorado game 1. But I think they're very anxious to get out and perform. I think they're very anxious to play a Division I basketball game at home. And obviously with it being a conference game, I think they are desperate for a win, but no more or no less than they would have been if we were 2-0.
Obviously, Bodie Hume's been around for a while. It doesn't seem like there's that many guys in the conference that are upperclassmen that have been here since they were freshmen. What have you seen, like, in his style, how he's kind of, evolved as a player? And then also, they got some transfers, the Colorado kid that's been big for them.
Yeah, I think what you see probably is just sliding into more of a leadership role and seeing how vocal he is and understanding of how things are done and kind of the example setter in situations. But the way he's utilized on the offensive end of the ball and the defensive end are fairly same to his last 2 years. And I think that that's advantageous to being a freshman with a big role. right? And so that you don't have to change and evolve as much. You just might add some tools to your kit. And, we quite haven't seen a lot of those jump out quite yet. He's handling the ball more, maybe in ball screens more than he would have been a year ago. And so that creates opportunity for him to create shots for others. But right now he's been scoring the ball and shooting the ball. And those are the things that he's always done.
Didn't quite get the win that you guys would have wanted at Arizona, but based on that game and the win you guys had against a Power 5 team like Washington, playing tough teams like that, what kind of strengths does that reveal from your team so far this year?
Confidence, growth, really upside, right? It says that our ceiling is fairly high. And the biggest thing for us right now is can we put it together for 40 minutes? You're going to have some slippage here and there, but can you put the intent, the intensity, the discipline together for 40 minutes? Because teams that don't beat themselves tend to win the most games, and we're becoming that team. We're not there yet, but that's an area of growth for us because of our youth. And we just had a lot of guys going down the stretch of that game that hadn't been there before. And then a week prior, we had beaten Washington and had some similar things happen. They came out to a good start in the second half, tied the game, take a lead. We just didn't have some of those shots dropped in the Washington game that allowed us to pull away.
Travis, one of the things you guys have done this year is the solidarity on the backs of everybody's jerseys. Can you just kind of walk us through kind of those conversations that you guys had and what made you ultimately decide to do that for this season for, your guys' uniforms?
A lot of those conversations are locker room conversations, right? Because some of us had some experiences that maybe we're not willing to share with everyone. But the biggest thing for our group was coming together. And that's what I've always felt this country was missing. And I spoke on that in my first interview after being silent for a while in May. And it was June, I believe, when that article came out. But I'd had some conversations with some other coaches nationally, some other people in athletics nationally, some of my peers, some people I look up to, and just perspective, right? And I think one of the things that a lot of us did in athletics was share perspective. And the ones that did, you got a pretty good feel for where people were, and the ones that didn't, you probably knew they didn't care. And so at the end of the day, the most important thing about surviving 2020, the things that we've experienced in 2020, is coming together and creating common goals and having a common destination in terms of where we want to be as people. And that's been missing in the United States. And so as, a team that wanted to maybe have a couple of different statements on their jersey that really spoke for that same message, we just came together on one. And some of that was through conversation with the athletic department. Seth Bodner's been very active with athletics, with my program for sure, in terms of having dialogue back and forth with the guys, and sharing his mission and some of the things that he's been involved with. And as the athletic department started developing programs, our guys became more vocal outside of our group and outside of our locker room. And that's really how I came up with the word solidarity. But the reality was I really got that from Conzo Martin from the University of Missouri, which is someone that I've had a lot of dialogue with over the last year or so. And he used it a couple of times in some conversation and sometimes when I heard him spoke, and it really stuck with me. And I thought it was very fitting for where our country, where our individual communities and where our community needs to be. And so I thought it was fitting to have on the back of our jersey.
And to kind of follow up on that, like you kind of mentioned, it was one thing to kind of be vocal back in the summertime, but, another to kind of take action, which how big was that? Or, I guess how important did you think that was for you guys to kind of continue that message, even as kind of the attention kind of died down? You see Robby Beasley, Kyle Owens, some of these guys have been like, taking portraits through the athletic department. A lot of your students have done that. So, how important has that been for you to see them kind of continue that message past, when, just to kind of keep that going?
Well, an opinion doesn't go very far if it's not executed. And it's easy to complain or make comments about things that are going on that you might not agree with, but it's another thing to act. And, I had said this a long time ago. I don't tweet on these things a lot, but I had tweeted once about reading the comments to things that people were doing and saying. And a lot of the comments were negative. And, rather than make comments, why not come up with ideas of things that become the solutions? And so to me, if you're solution oriented, you're helping the situation, right? In every aspect of our life. And we're not even, we can go off topic and just say within athletics. In a timeout, I can go into a timeout and tell my team exactly what they're not doing. But if I don't tell them how to do it, nothing's going to change. And that was the biggest thing to me was, I wanted to see as many people around me that I communicate with and play a role with, be a part of the solution. And that is really the biggest thing for me. So I'm seeing that. I think, as a program that was 100% active in terms of registering to vote and voting, that was step one, right? And so then taking the education that some of these guys got that they didn't have about the power of the vote and the power of being involved in your community, taking that information and sharing it with someone else who doesn't have it is step two. And we've done that as a program. I think a lot of us have done that individually in our own communities away from here. And that's a part of the solution to me. And so we just need to continue to do that. It doesn't end with voting. It doesn't end with, one idea that leads to a solution. I think this is something that is supposed to continue and really is what the United States is supposed to be about it, right? If the word united is going to be at the front end of the name of a country, then we need to unite. And part of that is being together on our mission.
Perfect. Thank you.
Coach, how much different or where would you assess where this team is at entering these two Big Sky games compared to Southern Utah?
More prepared. No, we went into Southern Utah game with one game under our belt. We had no non-Division I games, no scrimmages, no anything. We hadn't even really scrimmaged each other very much because we had a ton of injuries, and we had a couple shutdowns. So we just didn't know who we were. I think we're closer to identifying who we are and what our roles are. Our rotations are a little tighter than they were back then, and we've had some success since then. So now we're going to find out whether we can handle that little bit of success that we've had.
What is Robby getting healthy and being a spark plug? What does he bring? What has he added to this team?
Depth, another ball handler, another shooter, another person that can create for others more so than just himself. And it just creates more versatility. We can go to 3-guard lineup. It's depth at the 1 or the 2. And if there's another guy on the floor that you have to guard, it creates more spacing for others.
I know, I think it was after the Yellowstone Christian game, either that or the game before that. But, I asked Michael Steadman and Kyle Owens kind of like how they feed off of each other. And when you see those two together on the court, what kind of relationship do you see from those two big guys? And what does that mean for the team?
I see a growing relationship, right? Because they haven't played together, right? Steadman was a redshirt last year, so he was always on the other team. And so all their reps together are either in this year's practices or in this year's games. And I see that relationship growing, right? And typically in our system, it's built on those two positions getting assists to one another. And I see that starting to happen. And I think that is very important to the success of this program this year. And I'm excited to see those two continue to play together.
Their assist to turnover ratio is not very good. I know that's a kind of a stat or category that you've always felt is important. Is that one that maybe, hey, if we look at the end of the box score after these two games, if we can do really well in that area, then we'll be all right?
As a team, yes, but that's an area of growth for us is offensive field goal percentage and assist to turnover ratio, right? And if we're making more shots, our assists go up. So that's part of it. And then the other part is just execution. I think that we get into ruts where we've got a lot of talented offensive players and we might go 2 or 3 possessions without a basket. Instead of settling down and sharing more, the ball gets stickier because we think it's my job to go get that bucket for us, and that's an area of growth for us. And if we have a little more patience and stick to the script a little better, we will get back to being that team that shoots 50% from the floor, and our assist to turnover ratio will increase.
And last one for me. We've seen in a lot of the conferences that play these back-to-back games, and we saw it with Northern Colorado when they played Idaho State. A lot of the times the team that, wins the first game, it's completely different the second. We've seen teams that, win by 20 the first time and then they lose outright the second. How do you think that's going to maybe like play out through the season? And why do you think that is, that so far that's been a trend in college basketball as a whole?
Well, part of it is that we have the same officials both games. And so I think they might make adjustments too. As an example, the Northern Colorado Idaho State game was way more physical the first game. In the second game, Northern Colorado didn't get away with the physical defense they were playing. And therefore, Idaho State had to free throw line a little more, and they got the ball where they wanted it a little more. And so I think when you have players, coaches, and officials making adjustments from one game to the next, it just calls for a completely different game. And you almost got to take the first one and throw it out going in. And so I just think that there's just so many different variables that come into play that you can go from one blowout and flip it and the other team get blown out as well. So I think it's just going to be very unpredictable.